Ethan Cole used to measure life in sunlight. Morning light on his hands as he sanded lumber. Afternoon glare bouncing off steel beams. Golden sunsets washing across job sites as he stayed late just to admire the satisfaction of a day's work. But the world went dark the afternoon the scaffolding failed. One wrong foot placement, one careless moment from a contractor, and Ethan's life was rewritten in a matter of seconds. There was a loud crack, a fall, then nothing. Except endless darkness that never lifted again. Years passed, but the memory stayed loud. Now every morning started the same. Silence, the gentle tap of his cane on worn hardwood floors, and the slow acceptance that today, like yesterday, would be navigated by sound, touch, trust, and courage. He had learned to live with quiet dignity, learned to smile when he didn't feel like smiling, learned to make jokes so no one else would feel sorry for him, learned to say, "I'm okay," even when the truth lingered unspoken behind his calm voice. He had lost his sight, but he refused to lose himself. Still, life had become smaller, safer, predictable. On a warm Saturday morning in a small American town outside Austin, Texas, Ethan decided to do something he rarely did anymore: go for a walk in the park. His therapist said fresh air helped. His neighbor insisted the community events were good for him. He didn't realize that community event meant Police K-9 Demonstration Day, an event that had practically the entire town out watching. Kids laughed. Parents clustered. Officers proudly stood beside massive German Shepherds and Belgian Malinois, each bred to be strength wrapped in fur. Ethan didn't hear any of that right away. All he heard was life, birdsong, wind rustling through leaves, people chatting. He liked that. It felt normal, felt like a world he remembered, even if he couldn't see it now. He followed the paved walkway with his cane, counting steps like muscle memory. 24 steps from the entrance bench, 8 steps toward the fountain, turned slightly left, always left. Except today, the layout wasn't the same. Temporary fences, barricades, loudspeakers, crowds packed tighter than usual. But Ethan didn't know. He walked right toward the center of the demonstration zone, unaware that people suddenly stopped what they were doing to stare. Conversations died mid-sentence. Parents nudged their kids back. A murmur spread as a tall, blind man unknowingly walked into the training arena of the most unpredictable police dog in the state. A voice crackled over a megaphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain behind the barrier." But Ethan didn't react. He didn't know the barrier was right behind him now. He didn't know he had just stepped past it. Standing on the other side of the field, Officer Lucas Ramirez stiffened. He'd been Razor's handler for nearly 2 years, and even he still didn't fully trust the dog. Razor wasn't like the others. He wasn't obedient out of affection. He obeyed out of intensity, out of instinct, out of something wild that never quite broke. The department labeled him the most dangerous K-9 on the force. Powerful, relentless, and impossible to predict when triggered. They were only using him today because pulling him from public duty raised questions they weren't ready to answer. Lucas followed Razor's gaze, and his blood ran cold. The dog had locked eyes on Ethan, body stiff, muscles coiled, head low, breathing heavier. Razor didn't just see a person, he saw vulnerability. He saw an unknown variable walking straight into his space. "Ramirez," another officer hissed, "get your dog under control." "I've got him," Lucas muttered, though his pulse thundered with doubt. Parents clutched their children tighter. A little boy whispered loudly, "Mommy, is the dog gonna bite him?" "Don't look," she whispered back. Ethan slowed, confusion rippling through him. The world felt different here. Sound changed. Space around him felt too quiet, like every breath in the park stopped waiting for something to happen. He could feel stares even if he couldn't see them. He heard whispers, nervous shifting, the crackling tension in the air. Then he heard it. Heavy paws against packed dirt. A deep, steady breathing. A low rumble of restrained power. Ethan froze. "Hello," he called, unsure which direction to face. "Is someone there?" No one answered. They were too afraid to move, too afraid to distract Razor, too afraid to do anything that might make things worse. Lucas tightened his grip on the leash. Razor's body trembled with tension, instincts wrestling commands. This was what everyone feared. This exact moment. Vulnerable civilian. Razor's reputation. Razor's strength. Razor's unpredictability. Once this dog committed to something, almost nothing stopped him. Razor, sit, Lucas commanded, voice sharp, controlled. Razor did not sit. Instead, he stepped forward. The leash slipped tight. Lucas planted his boots, muscles straining, heart hammering. Razor, no. But Razor wasn't listening. He only saw Ethan. He only heard Ethan's heartbeat, too slow, too calm, too open. Something unfamiliar stirred deep inside the dog. Not aggression, not prey drive, something else. Something confusing even to him. Ethan heard movement rushing toward him fast. His chest tightened. Adrenaline burned under his skin. He planted his cane and braced himself. "Somebody tell me what's happening," he shouted, voice cracking more than he'd like to admit. Nobody answered. A gasp rolled through the audience like a wave. Razor broke free from Lucas's grasp. The handler stumbled forward, empty leash swinging. Another officer swore under his breath. Someone screamed. A child cried. Razor closed the distance. 10 feet. 6. 3. Ethan could feel breath on his hands. He swallowed hard, heart in his throat. "Easy," he whispered to whatever stood in front of him. To everyone watching, it looked like the moment before disaster. The most feared police dog in the county stood inches from a defenseless blind man. Officers tensed, hands hovering near tranquilizers they prayed they wouldn't need. The air felt too thin to breathe. Razor lifted his head, teeth bared slightly, eyes burning with intensity. He leaned closer, sniffing, absorbing everything. Ethan's scent, his fear, his calmness trying to hold. The faint smell of hospital soap still clinging to him after all these years. The loneliness wrapped around his heartbeat. 1 second stretched into an eternity. Then something unbelievable happened. Razor's posture softened. His teeth disappeared behind his lips. His ears eased back. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his massive head beneath Ethan's trembling hand. The park gasped. Lucas stared, stunned. It felt like the world itself didn't know how to process what was happening. Ethan's fingers brushed warm fur. He inhaled sharply. The dog wasn't hostile. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't rigid. He was calm, solid, gentle in a way that didn't feel fragile at all. It felt powerful, protective, like standing next to a wall that would never let anything touch you. Ethan exhaled shakily and let his hand rest fully on Razor's head. He laughed softly, the kind of disbelieving laugh that came from equal parts relief and awe. "Hey there, big guy," he whispered. Razor leaned closer. He gave a small, almost uncertain whine, like something inside him recognized Ethan, like he had been searching for this exact person without knowing it. People cried. People clapped. People simply stared, speechless. The most dangerous dog in the department bowed to a blind stranger like a knight kneeling to a king. Lucas took a step forward, eyes burning with emotion he'd never admit to. He didn't understand this. Razor never trusted anyone. Razor barely trusted him. Yet here the dog stood, choosing softness, choosing vulnerability, choosing loyalty to a man who couldn't even see him. But before the miracle could sink in, Razor suddenly stiffened again. His ears shot forward. His muscles coiled. His head snapped sharply toward the far end of the park. The crowd noticed too. Something was wrong, something beyond this moment, something bigger. Razor gave a low, warning growl, not at Ethan, but at something coming. And this time, everyone could feel it. The sudden shift in Razor's stance turned the crowd from awe to panic in a heartbeat. Ethan felt the tension before he understood it, muscles taut beneath his fingertips, fur bristling against his palms. He could hear the officers shouting commands, their voices thick with desperation. "Razor, heel, back." Lucas's voice cracked, fear threading through his normally steady tone. He had trained this dog for years, but nothing in those years could have prepared him for this moment. Razor didn't hesitate, didn't falter. Every ounce of his massive frame vibrated with purpose. Ethan froze. He could sense the sudden stillness around him. The crowd pressed closer, instinctively forming a circle of bodies, yet keeping cautious distance from the massive dog at their center. The wind carried a scent, subtle but sharp, something chemical, something foreign, a tang that didn't belong. Razor's growl deepened. It wasn't directed at Ethan, and it wasn't playful. It was warning. It was instinct honed through countless hours of police work. Lucas grabbed the leash again, fingers trembling, but Razor's body refused the pull. He planted his paws, low and solid, eyes fixed on a point in the distance that no one else could clearly see. Lucas cursed under his breath. No one else dared approach. Razor's reputation was earned in fear, and no one wanted to challenge him now. Ethan's heart hammered. He could feel Razor's tension, smell it, hear it in the subtle shift of his breathing. What's happening?" he whispered. His voice quavered despite his effort to stay calm. Lucas shot him a glance, panic flickering in his eyes. "Just stay still. Don't move," he said, trying to mask the dread in his voice. But he knew words wouldn't help. Razor had locked onto something beyond their control. From the edge of the park, a scream shattered the tense silence. High-pitched, urgent, human. A child. Someone shouted for help. The crowd scattered. Mothers clutched their kids, dragging them toward safety. The officers ran, trying to intercept the source of danger, but the chaos only confirmed what Razor had already sensed. Ethan froze, still holding onto Razor. The dog didn't leave his side. Instead, he shifted slightly, placing himself between Ethan and the approaching threat. Lucas followed the dog's line of sight and froze. A car was moving erratically along the park path, tires grinding on pavement too fast for the curve ahead. The driver's body slumped over the wheel, motionless, or pretending to be. But the car's trajectory was deadly, aimed straight at the gathering crowd. Panic surged through the spectators. A mother screamed, clutching her daughter's hand. A father dove to the ground, shielding his child. The chaos was immediate, instinctual, and terrifying. Razor barked. Not the playful bark from before, not the warning growl he used in drills. This was sharp, commanding, full of precision. He was a predator and a protector at once. He lunged, bounding toward the car in a motion so fast it blurred, leaving Lucas scrambling to catch him. "Razor, no!" Lucas shouted, panic choking his words. The massive dog ignored him entirely. Ethan clutched Razor's fur as the dog ran past him, agile and unstoppable, his training and instinct merging into a singular purpose. The car roared closer, tires squealing, metal grinding against the pavement. The spectators froze, horrified. A split second could mean disaster. From Ethan's position, everything was a blur of sound. The screeching tires, shouts of terror, heartbeats pounding in his ears. Razor's steady, urgent steps hitting the ground like the drumbeat of some unstoppable force. Then came the impact, metal against flesh, glass shattering, but Razor had already reached the car. Lucas and the other officers arrived at the scene just in time to see the impossible. Razor had launched himself through the open window of the moving vehicle. The car swerved violently, tires screeching, as the massive dog engaged with the driver. A struggle inside the vehicle was audible even from a distance, the sound of teeth clashing with flesh, grunts, growls, and a desperate attempt to control the dog. The crowd held their collective breath. Nobody moved. Nobody screamed. Nobody dared interfere. The tension was unbearable, every second stretching like an eternity. Ethan remained frozen, hands still resting on Razor's fur as he sensed the dog's focus pulling away from him, yet never abandoning his position entirely. Inside the car, chaos reigned. Razor's training kicked in, instincts overriding any thought of fear. He maneuvered around the driver, teeth clamping with precision, not to maim but to incapacitate. The man's arms flailed, his body jerking violently, but Razor was too skilled, too strong, too relentless. The car veered dangerously, threatening to roll over a bench, but Razor adjusted, using his massive weight and strength to stabilize the driver enough for officers to intervene. Lucas arrived at the driver's side, gun drawn, ready to act, but Razor didn't need him. The dog had the situation under control. He held the driver down, muzzle clamped on a wrist that had held a loaded firearm, muscles rippling under fur like a living weapon. The driver thrashed, struggled, but Razor's grip was unyielding, disciplined. This was a dog who could have destroyed, who could have attacked anyone in sight, and yet he was precise, surgical, protective. Ethan listened, breath shallow, as the commotion unfolded. The dog he had feared, whom the community had whispered about for years as uncontrollable, dangerous, unpredictable, was now a savior. His ears caught every subtle sound. The driver's heavy breathing, the crunch of metal, the whispers of officers moving closer. And all the while he could feel Razor's presence, the warmth and strength of his body, the reassurance that no harm would reach him. The driver finally slumped against the steering wheel, unconscious or defeated. It was hard to tell. Razor released the wrist but stayed alert, standing protectively in front of Ethan and the approaching officers. Lucas exhaled, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins. He could hardly comprehend what had just happened. The crowd erupted into a mix of cheers and stunned silence. Phones were raised to capture the impossible scene. News crews had already begun filming, faces frozen in shock as they documented the aftermath. But Ethan didn't notice any of it. He was focused on the dog at his side, Razor, the most feared dog in the department, who had saved him and dozens of others without hesitation. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Razor's head, feeling the steady rhythm of a living force that had just saved lives. He whispered, almost in disbelief, "Good boy." Razor whined softly, nudging Ethan gently as if acknowledging the bond forming between them. The park was still tense, still alive with the aftermath, but in that moment Ethan felt something he hadn't in years: safety, trust, connection. Lucas approached cautiously, still holding the leash. He's never done that before," Lucas said, voice shaking with emotion. He's never trusted anyone like that." Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest, not just from relief, but from understanding. This was more than a chance encounter. This was a meeting of two souls who had both lived lives full of isolation, fear, and misunderstanding. And now, by some impossible twist of fate, they had found each other. But as the crowd slowly gathered, buzzing with questions and awe, Ethan felt Razor stiffen again. His ears perked, his muscles tensed, and his eyes locked onto the far edge of the park. Something or someone was coming, something dangerous. The wind shifted, carrying a metallic scent that made Ethan's stomach twist. Razor growled low, the sound vibrating through his chest, a warning none could ignore. The officers tensed again. Parents clutched children. And in the middle of it all, Ethan realized he had no idea what was about to hit them. And then over the chaos came the unmistakable scream of terror. It was a sound that made blood run cold, a sound that promised that this encounter with danger was far from over. Razor, the most dangerous police dog, was ready for action once more. And Ethan was about to be pulled into a world he never thought he would live to see again. The scream tore through the park like a jagged knife, echoing across the trees and bouncing off the walls of nearby buildings. It was sharp, panicked, a human voice caught in pure terror. Ethan's pulse spiked, hammering in his ears. He gripped Razor's fur tighter, feeling the dog's body shift beneath his fingers, tense as coiled steel. "Stay with me, boy," Ethan whispered, voice trembling despite the command in his heart. He didn't know what they were facing, only that Razor sensed it, and Ethan trusted Razor more than he trusted anything he had ever known. Razor's eyes, dark and intelligent, didn't leave the edge of the park. He growled low, a deep vibration that seemed to resonate through the ground itself. Lucas and the other officers moved to intercept whatever threat Razor had detected, but the dog didn't budge. He remained close to Ethan, placing himself protectively, positioning his massive frame between the blind man and the unknown danger. The crowd had frozen, a mixture of awe and terror etched on every face. Some whispered prayers, others were rooted in shock. Phones recorded every second, capturing the scene that would later make national headlines, but right now, there was no time for cameras. There was only Razor, Ethan, and the unseen peril moving toward them. Then the first metallic scrape rang out, tires on asphalt, the unmistakable screech of a car out of control. The crowd's murmurs escalated into panicked shouts. Someone screamed for children to move. Another parent shouted to call 911. The sound of sirens began faintly in the distance, but no one expected help to arrive fast enough. Ethan felt the heat of adrenaline surge through him. He could smell smoke or perhaps gas, something acrid that made his eyes water, even if he couldn't see the smoke curling in the sunlight. The wind carried the stench, mixing it with the earthy smell of grass and the faint scent of leather and fur from Razor. The dog's entire body was focused, muscles rippling under his sleek coat. He was alive with intent, completely in the moment, completely unflinching. "Get down," Lucas shouted, pointing toward the approaching vehicle, though Ethan couldn't see it. But Razor didn't flinch. Instead, he adjusted his stance, ears forward, nose twitching, tail stiff. Ethan felt his legs shake as he took a step back, using Razor's body as a guide. The dog's warmth pressed against him, a living shield between him and the unknown. And then it appeared. A dark-colored SUV, tires squealing, careening toward the crowd with a driver slumped over the wheel. The vehicle wasn't slowing. Children were frozen in terror. Parents were shouting, dragging them toward safety. And through it all, Razor sprinted forward like a force of nature, ignoring every command from his handler, every instinct to retreat, every law of physics that would normally restrain even the fastest animal. Ethan's heart raced in sync with Razor's pounding steps. He tried to move out of the way, but the dog kept him in the safest position, guiding him subtly with nudges and positioning, instincts sharper than any human command. The car barreled closer, metal glinting under the sun, threatening to roll over benches and crush anyone in its path. Lucas shouted again, voice cracking, "Razor, get back." But Razor didn't retreat. He leapt. In one impossibly fluid motion, the dog launched himself through the open driver's side window of the moving SUV. The vehicle wobbled violently, tires squealing, as Razor engaged with the driver inside. The crowd gasped. Ethan pressed his face against Razor's side, trusting the dog entirely, as Lucas and other officers rushed toward the car. Inside, chaos erupted. The driver struggled, flailing arms wildly, but Razor was surgical. Teeth clamped with precision on the wrist that gripped a gun. The dog's massive body leveraged against the steering wheel, controlling the vehicle's movement, preventing it from crushing anyone. The driver screamed, cursing, thrashing, but Razor was immovable, unrelenting. His growls, low and controlled, signaled dominance, warning and control all at once. From Ethan's position, he could hear the battle of strength and will, the scraping of metal, the muffled shouts, the rhythmic thud of Razor's paws against the car interior. He realized in a moment of clarity that the dog had calculated every movement, every possible trajectory, every human life at risk. And yet, he had never hesitated, never faltered, never once bitten more than necessary. The car swerved dangerously close to a group of children huddled behind a bench, but Razor adjusted. One powerful shove, one precise movement, and the SUV veered just enough to miss them entirely. Every officer watching was frozen in disbelief. No human could have controlled the vehicle so perfectly in that situation. And yet, this dog, feared and labeled uncontrollable, had done exactly that. Finally, the driver collapsed, limp against the seat, unconscious or defeated. It was impossible to tell. Razor released his hold on the wrist but stayed alert, body rigid, gaze locked outward. Lucas rushed forward, hand trembling as he grabbed the leash, but Razor didn't resist. He simply maintained his protective stance, ensuring Ethan remained completely safe. The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheering and stunned silence. Phones captured the unbelievable scene. Mothers cried. Fathers shook their heads in disbelief. Children clutched stuffed animals, wide-eyed as if they had witnessed a miracle. And through it all, Ethan remained anchored by Razor's presence, feeling the dog's strength, warmth, and unwavering loyalty. Ethan whispered, voice trembling but filled with awe, You saved us all." Razor responded with a soft whine, nudging Ethan gently. The connection between them was undeniable, something beyond training, beyond instinct, beyond reason. It was understanding, recognition, perhaps even a kind of gratitude neither could articulate. Lucas approached cautiously, eyes wide. I don't know what to say," he admitted. "He's never done that before. He's never trusted anyone like that." Ethan's hand remained on Razor's head, feeling the dog's pulse beneath his fingers. He realized in that moment that Razor had chosen him, not by accident, not by mistake, but deliberately. The bond they shared was immediate, profound, and unspoken. But before they could fully absorb the miracle of the moment, Razor stiffened again. His ears shot forward. His body coiled like a spring. He growled, low and warning, eyes locked on something at the far edge of the park. The crowd turned to follow the dog's gaze, but all they saw was a flicker of movement, a shadow, a figure darting between trees, someone was coming. Ethan's heart skipped. He had survived a threat he couldn't see, guided by the instincts of a dog labeled uncontrollable. But now, something new approached, and Razor's reaction told him this was far from over. Lucas cursed under his breath, "Not again." Razor's growl intensified, vibrating through his massive frame. He didn't just sense danger. He was predicting it, calculating it, preparing for it. And this time, the threat was closer, faster, and far more dangerous than anything they had faced. Ethan swallowed hard, gripping Razor's fur with both hands. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," he whispered. Razor's eyes locked on him for a split second. Then, without hesitation, the dog bolted toward the approaching shadow, leaving Ethan to follow the sound of heavy paws pounding the ground, the scent of danger thick in the air, and a crowd frozen in suspense, hearts hammering in unison. The next moments would reveal a truth no one expected, a danger so real, so immediate, that the bond between a blind man and the most feared police dog would be tested like never before. And as they moved toward the unknown, Ethan realized something terrifying. This was only the beginning. The shadow moved faster now, slipping through the trees like a predator stalking prey. Ethan could hear its approach long before he could sense its shape, rustling leaves, snapping twigs, the uneven thump of heavy boots on dirt. He clutched Razor's fur tighter, feeling the dog tense beneath him. Every muscle in Razor's body coiled like a spring, ready to strike, ready to protect, ready to act before any human could even react. Lucas and the officers tried to flank the approaching figure, but Razor was already ahead of them. The dog moved with purpose, cutting the distance between Ethan and the threat, his ears flattened and his hackles raised in perfect synchronization with his instincts. The crowd had frozen behind barricades, holding their breath, caught between awe and terror. Ethan's heart raced in a way it hadn't in years. This wasn't a training scenario. This wasn't a controlled demonstration. This was real danger. And for the first time since losing his sight, he felt exposed, vulnerable, alive. What is it?" he whispered, voice cracking. His words were swallowed by the rustling of leaves and the distant roar of the SUV still smoking from Razor's previous heroic maneuver. Lucas clenched his jaw. "I don't know," he admitted, scanning the tree line, "but it's moving fast. Stay behind him." Razor growled, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through Ethan's chest. The dog's body stiffened, ready to intercept the unknown threat before it reached him. And then the figure emerged from the trees, a man hunched, carrying a heavy duffel bag. He didn't run like a panicked citizen. He moved like someone with purpose, someone who had calculated every step, every angle. Lucas's eyes widened. "Gun," he hissed, motioning to his fellow officers. "He's armed." Ethan froze, gun, weapon, danger, and he could only feel the weight of Razor's body as a shield between him and the threat. The crowd gasped, some screaming, some ducking instinctively behind barricades. Children cried, parents shouted, and in the middle of it all, Ethan realized how little time they had. Razor lunged forward, not with reckless abandon, but with precision. The dog's teeth flashed as he snapped at the man's ankle, forcing him to stumble. The duffel bag tumbled to the ground. The man cursed, spinning toward Razor, weapon raised. But Razor didn't attack recklessly. Every movement was calculated. Every strike was controlled. The dog forced the man to his knees, teeth gripping, eyes locked, preventing him from rising or firing. Lucas and the officers moved in, guns raised, but they hesitated, wary of the dog's intensity. Razor's growl deepened, warning them to stay back. He was in control, managing both the threat and Ethan's safety simultaneously. Ethan's hands trembled, still resting on Razor's back. He whispered almost to himself, "Stay with me, don't let him touch me." Razor responded with a low whine, leaning into Ethan slightly, acknowledging the unspoken promise, "I will protect you." The man on the ground struggled, panicked, but Razor's grip was unyielding. Officers rushed in, but Razor maneuvered carefully, preventing any friendly fire. The duffel bag was kicked toward Lucas. He caught it, yanking it open to reveal its contents, a cache of firearms, knives, and what smelled faintly of gasoline. The reality hit like a hammer. The man hadn't come to threaten just Ethan or the park. He had come to unleash chaos. "Explosives," Lucas whispered under his breath, eyes wide. He was planning, oh God. Razor growled again, low and warning, sensing Lucas's panic and the lingering danger in the bag. The dog had stopped fearing humans long enough to assess the immediate threat. His instincts were razor-sharp. This was a dog who could read the intent of a man faster than any human could process it. Ethan's breath caught. Explosives, the car, the duffel bag, danger he couldn't see. Danger he had never been able to anticipate. And yet Razor stood unwavering, resolute, ready to act before any harm could reach him. The man tried to lunge, to grab a weapon from the bag, but Razor reacted instantly, snapping at his wrist and forcing him back down. Officers finally moved in, handcuffing the man, but Razor's presence remained dominating. He didn't release fully until the threat was completely neutralized, watching every movement with an intensity that froze even trained officers in place. Ethan exhaled, finally allowing himself to step back slightly, still keeping one hand on Razor. "You saved us all again," he whispered. The words felt inadequate. They didn't capture the magnitude of what had just happened. The crowd began to murmur, some cheering, some crying, some simply staring in disbelief. Phones captured the entire scene, ready to share a story that seemed almost too cinematic to be real. Lucas approached Ethan cautiously, still gripping Razor's leash. He's never done that before," he admitted. He's never chosen anyone like that." Ethan felt a surge of connection, of understanding. This dog, feared and labeled uncontrollable, had instinctively recognized him as someone worth protecting. And in doing so, Razor had become more than a police dog. He had become a guardian, a protector, a companion in the truest sense. But just as relief began to settle, Razor's body stiffened again. His ears pricked, nose twitching, muscles taut as wire. Another sound, a soft, metallic scraping in the distance, faint but distinct, caught his attention. He growled, low and warning, eyes locking on the far side of the park. Ethan's stomach tightened. "Not again," he whispered, realizing that whatever danger had approached before had not fully left. Something else, something new, was coming. The officers tensed again, forming a protective perimeter around the crowd. Razor remained at Ethan's side, unwavering, alert, ready. The tension in the air was palpable. Every breath felt heavy, every second stretched. Every heart in the park seemed to beat in unison, anticipating the next move. Then a new sound, footsteps, faster now, deliberate, controlled, echoed across the open field. The figure emerged, but this time it wasn't alone. Two more shadows flanked the first, moving with lethal precision. Weapons glinted in the sunlight. Razor growled, low and menacing, shifting slightly to place himself between Ethan and the approaching threat. The crowd gasped again. Officers raised their guns, but Razor's presence commanded authority, signaling that he was in control. Ethan's mind raced. He had never faced anything like this. He couldn't see it, couldn't anticipate it, yet he trusted Razor completely. The dog's instincts were flawless, a perfect blend of training and raw intuition. Razor lunged forward, moving to intercept the trio, barking commands in his own way. The shadows paused, assessing the dog, their confidence wavering in the presence of a predator they hadn't expected. One of the men whispered a curse, shifting his stance, but Razor was relentless. He advanced with calculated force, forcing them to rethink their approach. Ethan's heart pounded. The adrenaline, the fear, the awe all combined into a single, sharp focus. He held onto Razor, feeling the dog's power and presence, knowing that as long as Razor stood with him, he had a chance to survive. The first man lunged. Razor met him instantly, teeth snapping with precision, muscles coiling like a spring. The struggle erupted in a flurry of controlled chaos. The other two hesitated, unsure whether to flee or fight, but Razor's presence alone was enough to command attention. Ethan whispered, voice steady despite his fear, "You've got this, boy. Protect us." Razor growled in acknowledgement, moving with fluid grace, an unstoppable force of loyalty and power. And as the three attackers reconsidered their plan, the crowd held their breath, realizing that the most feared dog in the state wasn't just a weapon. He was a hero, a protector, and the blind man's unlikely savior. But even as relief began to ripple through the park, Ethan knew one truth: this was far from over. Danger still lurked. Razor's instincts were telling him more than anyone could see, and whatever came next, it would test them both in ways neither could anticipate. The next heartbeat of suspense was coming, and neither man nor dog could afford to falter. The three attackers froze, uncertainty etched into their faces as Razor advanced, low growls rumbling from deep in his chest. The dog was faster than anything they expected, moving with lethal precision that betrayed no hesitation. Each of them knew instinctively he was not just a dog, he was a force of nature, a predator honed by years of police training. And right now, his target was anyone threatening Ethan. Ethan pressed against Razor's flank, one hand gripping the dog's fur, the other holding his cane. His pulse thundered in his chest, every nerve screaming, every instinct honed over years of navigating darkness now useless against the reality of this threat. He could hear the metallic scrape of knives, the shifting of boots on dirt, and the faint, electric hiss of a gun's safety being released. Lucas barked commands, but even he knew it was too late for orders to matter. Razor had already made a choice, and the dog was moving too fast, too precise, too unstoppable. The first attacker lunged, knife raised high, teeth bared in a grimace of determination. Razor met him instantly, jaws clamping on the wrist and forcing the weapon to the ground. The man cried out, thrashing, but Razor was a whirlwind of control, moving him away from Ethan while using his body to shield the blind man from harm. The second attacker tried to flank Razor, hopping to distract him, but the dog anticipated the movement with uncanny precision. A swift snap of Razor's jaws at the man's ankle sent him staggering, forcing him to retreat. Every movement was calculated, instinctual, and deadly. Razor's growls echoed like a warning, his muscles rippling beneath the sleek black and tan coat. Ethan's heart pounded, adrenaline mixing with awe. He whispered, voice trembling, "Go, go, Razor, protect us." The dog responded with a single, low whine, a sound that felt almost like understanding, like acknowledgement that Ethan's trust mattered more than anything. Razor pivoted seamlessly, placing himself directly between Ethan and the third attacker, who was circling cautiously, glancing at the chaos unfolding. Suddenly the attacker raised his gun, aiming directly at Ethan. Time slowed. Every instinct screamed. Lucas shouted, officers fired, the crowd screamed, but none of it mattered. Razor's eyes locked on the barrel, and in a motion that seemed impossible, he lunged upward, colliding with the man, knocking the weapon aside with a precision that defied logic. The gun skidded across the dirt. The attacker fell backward, scrambling, unprepared for the force of Razor's attack. The dog didn't bite recklessly. He incapacitated with surgical precision, forcing the man onto the ground and holding him there, teeth and paws in perfect coordination, until Lucas and the officers could secure him. Ethan could feel the dog's strength beneath his hands, steadying him, shielding him, commanding the space around them. He realized with a shock that Razor had not just saved him from harm, he had saved every life in that park. The crowd began to erupt into shouts and applause, some screaming for help, others crying in relief. Phones recorded every second, capturing the scene for what would become instant news across the nation. Mothers clutched their children, their faces pale, their eyes wide with awe. Fathers shook, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Lucas finally reached Razor's side, gripping the leash, heart racing. You did it," he said, voice trembling. "You saved them all. I don't understand how you knew what to do." Razor released the final attacker only when officers had handcuffed him and confiscated the weapon. The dog didn't move away from Ethan. He remained a solid wall of fur and muscle, his eyes scanning the park for any remaining threats. The crowd slowly began to relax, realizing that the danger had been neutralized, but a lingering tension still hung in the air, a reminder that chaos could return at any moment. Ethan exhaled shakily, running a hand along Razor's back. You saved us all again," he whispered, barely audible over the fatting chaos. The words felt inadequate. They didn't capture the full scope of the dog's heroism, the precise timing, the intelligence, and the unwavering loyalty that had kept him alive. Razor nudged Ethan gently, a subtle reminder of the bond that had formed between them in these moments of terror. It was more than trust. It was a connection deeper than anything Ethan had felt in years, a lifeline forged in fire and instinct. But even as relief began to wash over him, Ethan sensed something wasn't over. Razor's body stiffened again, ears perked, tail coiled like a spring. The dog's senses were alert to danger Ethan couldn't perceive. He could feel it through the pressure of Razor's muscles, the subtle shift in posture, the low growl that resonated through the dog's chest. A sudden rustle came from the far end of the park. Shadows moved among the trees, more figures. They were fast, deliberate, moving with lethal intent. The first wave of attackers had been neutralized, but this was something else, something worse. Lucas's eyes widened in realization. "More coming," he muttered. "We weren't done yet." Ethan's stomach tightened. He clutched Razor's fur, trusting the dog completely, knowing instinctively that Razor would not fail. The blind man had never faced danger like this before, yet in Razor's presence, he felt a strange combination of fear and absolute security. Razor lunged forward, intercepting the approaching figures before they could reach Ethan. The attackers tried to react, but Razor's precision and speed were unmatched. He moved with a grace and intelligence that was terrifying in its efficiency. Each strike, each bite, each maneuver was calculated to neutralize without unnecessary violence. The crowd could only watch in stunned silence. One of the men dropped a weapon. Another stumbled backward, face pale, eyes wide with disbelief. Razor's growls, teeth, and claws were enough to command obedience without harming anyone unnecessarily. His presence alone dominated the battlefield, controlling the scene in a way that left officers speechless. Ethan whispered again, "Good boy, keep them away." He could feel Razor's pulse, strong and steady beneath his palm. It was as if the dog was reassuring him, "I will not let anyone hurt you." Suddenly, a figure broke through the tree line, a shadow taller, more menacing than the others. A hand gleamed in sunlight, holding a weapon Ethan couldn't identify. Razor stiffened, growl rising to a roar that vibrated through the park. Every muscle coiled, every sense alert. Lucas and the officers moved to intercept, but Razor had already made a decision. He surged forward, faster than anything the humans could match, positioning himself between Ethan and the new threat. In that instant, it became clear. Razor wasn't just a dog. He was a guardian, a protector, a living shield whose instincts had saved countless lives today. The shadow hesitated, reevaluating the situation, but Razor's eyes locked on him with unwavering focus. The next moments would determine whether chaos or safety would reign. Ethan held on tight, heart hammering, and whispered, "We're ready, let's end this." Razor growled in response, the sound full of warning, intelligence, and determination. And in that split second, every life in the park depended on one dog's next move. The figure emerging from the tree line was larger than the others, imposing and deliberate. His hands glinted in the sunlight. One clutched a firearm, the other a heavy duffel bag. Every movement was calculated, measured, lethal. Lucas and the other officers froze for a fraction of a second, knowing Razor was already in motion. The dog's body rippled with controlled power, every muscle coiled like a spring ready to release. Ethan gripped Razor's fur tightly, feeling the immense force beneath his hands. His heart hammered in his chest, every nerve on edge, yet a strange calm washed over him. Razor was his shield, his guide, his guardian in the chaos that surrounded them. The figure stepped closer, eyes scanning the park. The crowd backed away instinctively, leaving open space between them and the approaching danger. Children clutched parents' hands, mothers whispered prayers, fathers cursed under their breath. Every heartbeat felt amplified, echoing the tension that gripped the air. Razor growled, a low, menacing rumble that shook the ground beneath him. The dog's eyes locked on the figure, unflinching, unwavering. And in that instant, Ethan understood something he had never realized before. This was not just a fight for his safety. This was a fight for every life in that park. The man moved suddenly, lunging toward Ethan. Razor reacted instantly, faster than the eye could follow. He barreled into the man, teeth snapping at the wrist holding the gun, knocking the weapon away. The duffel bag slipped from the man's other hand, skidding across the grass and spilling its contents, more firearms, knives, and horrifyingly small containers that leaked a faint chemical smell. Gasoline. Explosives. The reality hit like a thunderclap. This man had planned to cause unimaginable destruction. Ethan froze, paralyzed by the realization. The danger wasn't random. It was deliberate, calculated, deadly. He could feel the intensity of Razor's presence beneath him, the dog's body taut and coiled, prepared to act in a heartbeat. Every instinct Razor had honed over years of training surged forward, guiding him in a battle that no human could have navigated with such precision. Lucas moved to intervene, gun raised, but Razor anticipated every move. He pinned the attacker against the ground, using his massive body to control the man while keeping Ethan out of harm's way. The officer barely had to act. The dog's precision and power were unmatched. The man thrashed violently, trying to reach for his weapons, but Razor was relentless. Teeth clamped with calculated force, keeping the man subdued without unnecessary injury. Every movement was perfect, surgical, controlled. Lucas and the other officers quickly handcuffed the attacker, removing the immediate threat. Ethan exhaled shakily, running a hand along Razor's back. You saved us all," he whispered, awe and disbelief threading through his voice. The dog responded with a soft nuzzle, a quiet affirmation that the bond between them had solidified in the fire of real danger. But the threat wasn't over. Lucas approached the duffel bag, lifting its contents carefully. The smell of gasoline made his stomach churn. "Explosives," he muttered, voice trembling. He was planning a massacre. Panic flickered in the officer's eyes. The realization of what Razor had prevented hit them all simultaneously. Had the dog not reacted with such speed, countless lives would have been lost. Ethan's knees weakened. The full scope of what had just happened began to sink in. Razor, a dog labeled uncontrollable and dangerous, had not only protected him, he had prevented a disaster that would have made headlines worldwide. Every life in the park, every innocent bystander, had survived because of the instincts, intelligence, and loyalty of a single animal. The crowd slowly began to murmur, awe and disbelief mingling in their voices. Mothers hugged their children, some sobbing uncontrollably. Fathers shook their heads, muttering about luck and fate. Phones were raised, recording every second, capturing footage that would later dominate news broadcasts. And in the center of it all, Ethan remained anchored by Razor, feeling the dog's warmth and strength. Lucas approached, finally finding his voice. He's never done anything like this before," he said, shaking his head. "He's the most feared dog in the department, but today he chose you. He saved countless lives because of you. I don't even know how to explain it." Ethan's hand rested on Razor's head, feeling the heartbeat beneath the fur. "I don't think it's about me," he whispered. "I think it's about trust, and you're the only one I've ever trusted like this." Razor leaned into him, a subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement. In the chaos and terror of the last several minutes, something unspoken had formed, a bond forged in real, unrelenting danger, stronger than words could describe. The officers carefully secured the duffel bag and the weapons, but the tension in the park lingered. There were still questions, still the realization that this had been a narrowly avoided catastrophe. Yet amidst the chaos, a sense of awe remained. A blind man, a dog labeled uncontrollable, had faced a calculated, lethal threat and survived. Ethan realized for the first time in years that he had not just survived danger. He had been saved by an extraordinary being who saw him not as vulnerable, but as someone worth protecting. Razor's instincts, honed over countless drills and missions, had chosen him specifically, acting faster, smarter, and more decisively than any human could have. And as he held onto the dog's fur, feeling the warmth and strength beneath his hands, Ethan understood the magnitude of the moment. This was no accident, no luck, no coincidence. This was destiny, played out in the life-or-death precision of a dog who had finally found the person he was meant to protect. Razor finally released the last attacker completely, standing tall beside Ethan. His eyes scanned the park, alert but calm, ready for any lingering threats. The crowd erupted into applause, shouts, and tears. Cameras clicked and flashed. News crews captured the impossible scene. A blind man and the most feared police dog in the state, both alive, both unharmed, both triumphant. Ethan whispered softly, voice trembling, "You're incredible, Razor. You're a miracle." Razor nudged him gently, a reminder that the bond between them was real, unbreakable, and forged in fire. And as the authorities led the attackers away, Ethan realized something that left him both shaken and profoundly moved. He had survived not by luck, not by chance, but because of a dog who had risked everything to protect him. In that moment, the world learned an undeniable truth. Sometimes the most feared, dangerous creatures are the ones with the greatest capacity for loyalty, bravery, and love. But even as the adrenaline faded and the crowd slowly began to disperse, Ethan felt a lingering unease. Razor's senses were still alert, still scanning, still ready. Danger had come close, but had it truly passed? And in the shadow of that thought, Ethan realized that this was only the beginning of something far larger, an extraordinary bond, a story of heroism, and a partnership that no one, not even the authorities, could have anticipated. The blind man and the most dangerous police dog had survived together. And the world would never see them the same way again. The park, once chaotic and screaming, had settled into an eerie calm. The crowd thinned, leaving a trail of scattered belongings, overturned chairs, and anxious whispers. News crews hovered at the edges, cameras still rolling, capturing the tension that lingered in the air. Ethan stood near the center, still gripping Razor's fur, feeling the dog's solid weight beneath his hands. His legs trembled from adrenaline, his heart still racing, but the immediate danger was gone, or so it seemed. Lucas approached, eyes scanning the perimeter. His uniform was rumpled, sleeves damp with sweat. "We've secured the area," he said, voice still tight. "The attackers are in custody. No explosives detonated. Everyone's alive." His gaze softened when it landed on Ethan. "Thanks to him," he added, nodding toward Razor. Ethan knelt slightly, brushing his hand along Razor's neck. "It wasn't just him," he whispered. "We were a team. We survived together." Razor leaned into Ethan, nudging him gently, eyes meeting his with a look that seemed almost human in its intelligence. He whined softly, a sound that vibrated with reassurance, relief, and unspoken understanding. Ethan had faced terror head-on, blind and vulnerable, yet the dog had chosen him as his anchor, his partner in survival. And for the first time in years he felt seen, even in darkness. The crowd had begun to murmur again, curiosity and awe threading through their voices. Phones captured every moment, streaming live across social media, and soon news feeds would flood with the story of the blind man and the most dangerous police dog in the state. Ethan had survived a life-or-death encounter that most people would never believe, yet Razor had done it with precision, intelligence, and a loyalty that defied explanation. As officers walked through the scene, collecting evidence and assessing the damage, Lucas finally knelt beside Ethan. "I don't even know where to start," he admitted, his voice low. "Razor, he's never behaved like this. Not with anyone, not even me, his handler, but with you he trusted you instantly, completely. You've changed him." Ethan swallowed, a mixture of awe and uncertainty twisting in his chest. "I don't know if I changed him," he said quietly. I think he found me. Maybe I was the one who needed him as much as he needed me." Lucas nodded slowly, a rare smile breaking through his professional composure. "You're right. That bond, it's something you don't see every day, not in a lifetime, and it saved lives today, countless lives." Meanwhile, medics had arrived to check on bystanders, some of whom were still trembling, shock evident on their faces. Parents clutched children, whispering reassurances, while officers guided the remaining crowd out of the park. Ethan stayed with Razor, refusing to let go. He couldn't articulate why, but the dog had become more than a protector. He had become a lifeline, a partner in a world that had once felt impossibly dark and lonely. Officers began securing the attackers' weapons and explosives. One of them, a young recruit, looked on in awe, shaking his head. "I've trained with K9s my whole career," he murmured, "but I've never seen anything like this. He saved everyone." Ethan nodded silently. Words seemed inadequate. Razor whined softly, nudging him again, and Ethan realized he had to respond in kind. He pressed his forehead lightly against the dog's side, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." Lucas cleared his throat, gently interrupting the quiet bond forming between the man and the dog. "We need to get you checked out," he said. "Medics want to make sure you're okay. Adrenaline only lasts so long." Ethan nodded reluctantly. With Razor at his side, he allowed officers to guide him toward the medics, still keeping one hand pressed against the dog's sleek coat. He felt an odd mix of vulnerability and security, blind, but no longer afraid. Razor's presence anchored him in a way he had never experienced before. As medics checked Ethan for injuries, Lucas stayed close, glancing at Razor, who remained alert, scanning the perimeter for any remaining threats. "He's extraordinary," Lucas muttered under his breath. "I've trained him for years, but I've never seen him like this, not even with me. There's something about you, Ethan, something he recognized." Ethan exhaled, exhausted yet strangely exhilarated. "Maybe he recognized someone who needed saving and someone who could trust him," he replied quietly. The weight of the past few hours pressed on him, but he felt a strange sense of clarity. For the first time since the accident that had blinded him, he felt alive, connected, and capable. As the crowd dispersed, reporters clamored for interviews, eager to tell the story of the blind man and the dog who had saved countless lives. Ethan remained quiet, allowing Lucas to handle questions, while he and Razor shared a silent, unspoken understanding. The dog had chosen him, and he had accepted that choice wholeheartedly. Later in the quiet aftermath, Ethan sat on a park bench with Razor at his feet, his hand resting lightly on the dog's head. Lucas approached, a rare, unguarded expression on his face. "You've given him something today," Lucas said softly. "Trust, purpose, and maybe a reason to connect. He's always been a weapon, but today he was so much more." Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of the words. He's more than a weapon. He's alive, he feels, he cares, and today he saved lives because he chose to care. Razor nudged Ethan gently, tail thumping softly against the bench. Ethan laughed quietly, a mix of relief and disbelief. "You're incredible," he whispered. "I don't know how to thank you." Lucas smiled, watching the bond form between man and dog. "I don't think you need to," he said. "It's already clear. He's yours now and you're his. That's more than most people ever get." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the park, Ethan realized that the world had shifted for him. He was no longer simply surviving in darkness. He had a companion, a protector, and a friend in Razor, someone who would never leave his side, someone who had proven that courage, loyalty, and instinct could defy the impossible. And yet, in the back of his mind, a question lingered. The attackers had been defeated, but the presence of explosives, the precision of their plan, it couldn't have been random. Someone had orchestrated this, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the danger wasn't fully over. Razor, ever vigilant, sensed it too. The dog's ears twitched, nostrils flaring, body coiled with readiness. Ethan pressed his hand to Razor's side, whispering, "I trust you. Whatever comes next, we face it together." The bond between them had been forged in chaos, tested in life-or-death situations, and solidified in a trust that transcended words. They were a team now, blind man and dangerous dog, united by instinct, loyalty, and shared survival. But as the shadows lengthened across the park, Ethan knew one truth: their story was far from over. Whoever had sent the attackers, whoever had orchestrated the plan, had yet to be revealed. And when they did, Razor and Ethan would be ready. The world had just witnessed a miracle. And the next chapter of their story was about to begin. The park was quiet now, but the tension lingered like a shadow. The attackers had been taken into custody, the explosives secured, and the crowd had dispersed in a mix of awe and disbelief. Yet Ethan knew, deep down, that the danger wasn't fully gone. Whoever had orchestrated the attack had been methodical, precise, and terrifyingly intelligent. The question wasn't if they would strike again, it was when. Razor stood at Ethan's side, ears twitching, nose lifting to scent the wind, muscles coiled like steel springs. Ethan could feel every subtle movement beneath his hands, every shift of weight, every twitch of instinct. The dog had chosen him, had saved him, had acted without hesitation, and now the bond between them was unbreakable. Lucas approached cautiously, still scanning the park. "We've notified every department. They're running checks for accomplices," he said. His voice was calm but edged with respect. "But I've never seen anything like this. Never." He nodded toward Razor, whose intense gaze never wavered from Ethan. "He's yours now, and you too. You've survived something almost no one could." Ethan exhaled, fingers pressing lightly along Razor's fur. "He's more than mine," he said softly. "He's my partner, my guardian, my friend." He paused, letting the words sink in. "And I'm his." Lucas smiled, though his expression remained tinged with disbelief. "You're both lucky," he admitted. "Most people never experience a bond like that in their lifetime, and most don't survive to tell the story if they try." Ethan's mind drifted back to the moments of terror. The SUV barreling through the park, the attackers closing in, Razor lunging with precision, controlling the chaos. Every second had been a choice, a calculated movement, a risk, and yet Razor had executed each with flawless instinct. And in that chaos, Ethan had realized something profound. Courage wasn't just human. Loyalty wasn't just human. And love, well, sometimes it came on four legs with fur, teeth, and unwavering devotion. As the adrenaline faded, Ethan finally allowed himself to relax slightly. He felt the warmth of Razor's body beneath his hand, steady and reassuring. The dog nudged him gently, as if reminding him that even in darkness he was safe. Ethan laughed softly, a mixture of relief and disbelief. "You're incredible, Razor. You saved lives, including mine." Razor responded with a soft whine, leaning closer. In that simple gesture, Ethan understood a truth deeper than any words could convey. This dog had chosen him as much as he had chosen the dog. They were no longer two separate beings, blind man and dangerous dog. They were a single unit, a partnership forged in chaos, tested in fire, and sealed by trust. Suddenly, Lucas's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, brow furrowed. "We've got another lead," he said slowly. "The investigation suggests that the attackers were part of a larger plan. Someone higher up orchestrated this. Someone we haven't identified yet." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The danger wasn't over, but he didn't feel fear this time, not like before. Razor was with him. He had survived the impossible once, guided by the dog's instincts. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The setting sun cast long shadows across the park, highlighting the scene of chaos that had been narrowly avoided. Officers were securing evidence, medics checking on bystanders, and reporters documenting every detail. And through it all, Ethan and Razor stood together, silent, alert, and unyielding. Lucas knelt briefly beside Ethan, lowering his voice. "I need to warn you," he said. "This might not be over. Whoever sent those men, they may come back, and next time it could be worse, but I have to tell you something else." He paused, eyes locking on Razor. "I've trained this dog for years. I've handled him in every scenario imaginable, but I've never seen him choose anyone like this. Not even me. You've formed a bond that defies explanation." Ethan's fingers rested lightly on Razor's head, brushing along the fur. "Maybe that's just how it's meant to be," he said softly. "Maybe we were supposed to find each other." Lucas nodded, though his expression was serious. "Just be careful, keep him close, trust him completely, and don't underestimate what he can sense. He's remarkable." As Lucas walked away, Ethan allowed himself a moment to breathe. He pressed his forehead against Razor's neck, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "We made it through," he whispered, "and whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Razor leaned into him, tail thumping gently against the ground. In that quiet moment, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude and clarity. The dog had risked everything to protect him, not because of orders, not because of training, but because of an unspoken recognition that they were bound together in purpose and trust. The first stars began to appear in the sky, twinkling above the park. The chaos of the day was fading into memory, but the bond between Ethan and Razor was eternal. It wasn't just survival that defined them. It was loyalty, courage, and the unshakable trust that comes from facing danger side by side. Ethan's thoughts drifted to the attackers, to the unexploded threat, to the unknown figure behind it all. The danger wasn't gone, but now he felt something he had never felt before: confidence. Razor had chosen him. He had survived impossible odds, and together they were ready for whatever came next. He whispered one final time, voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for saving me, for trusting me, for being my partner. Whatever happens next, we face it together." Razor nudged him, then pressed close, body a shield, a guardian and a friend all at once. In that instant, Ethan understood the truth. The world had just witnessed heroism, but what mattered most was the unbreakable bond between a blind man and the dog who had chosen him. And somewhere deep in the shadows, beyond the park, someone or something watched. The story wasn't over, But with Razor by his side, Ethan knew one thing with absolute certainty: they would survive, together. As the night fell over the city, the heroism of the day became legend in whispers and headlines alike. People would talk about the blind man and the most dangerous police dog who had faced death and emerged victorious. They would speak of courage, of loyalty, of instinct. But Ethan and Razor knew the truth. It wasn't luck. It was trust. It was partnership. It was love. And in the darkness, that bond shone brighter than any light, guiding them into whatever the future held. The world had been changed forever. And so had they. The end.